Recording for the YouTube audience. And going live now. Going live, going live. We are now going live. What's up, fight fans, and welcome to episode, what are we, 18? Episode 18 of Stoner versus Stoner. My name's Chino LaForge. I'm one of the hosts, stand-up comedian and fight enthusiast. With me is my co-host on this side, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt competitor, Don Stoner. Go ahead and tell the audience who you are.
What's up, everybody? Don Stoner over here, the other half of Stoner vs. Stoner, Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Higa Machado. I have my own school up here in Washougal called Lone Wolf Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and compete as much as I can, trying to compete, trying to get a little bit better every day with myself and my students, and watch every MMA fight out there.
Absolutely. That's what we're here to talk about. And also, obviously, my last name is not Stoner. So I hope you understand why we're called Stoner versus Stoner. Just want to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Cody Mendoza, who gave us great intel that we were lacking on about the Bellator fights last week. My buddy Zach Zane was fighting. He trains with Maui Jiu-Jitsu. Unfortunately, the fight didn't take place. But Cody gave us some great intel about the fight before it happened. So thanks for listening, Cody. We appreciate it. Give you a shout out off the top. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Cody. That was that Nick Newell fight. We didn't know that Nick Newell was fighting your Hawaiian boy. And, man, I hope that fight happens because I'm a huge Nick Newell fan. I mean, the guy has one arm or one hand, and he's at the top of the game. Didn't get a shot in the UFC, got a shot in Bellator.
Yeah, if anything, that could make it really difficult to break a grip for like a rear naked choke. You know, where you peel off the glove or the hand, you know, that you start reaching for something that's not there, your last couple seconds of consciousness are going to turn to panic for sure.
Yeah, he uses it in his chokes. That's what's so cool. Like, he uses it in his chokes. He had a war with Justin Gaethje in World Series of Fighting. You know, Justin just put a beat down on him, but he has so much heart. And he went for that guillotine, and he goes for the rear naked choke. And there's no hand there, so you have to get it's pretty devastating.
There's no place to get a good grip on it, especially if you're sweaty. Man, can you imagine trying to grab that thing sweaty? That's like trying to hold on to onto a popsicle, trying to do a pull-up. Well, let's get right into it, man. We had some great fights this weekend. Now, this was the last bets for October, meaning that you and I had our score pretty close. I was only up by 2 at the beginning of this, and it was a close one. Do you know how the scores turned out for our final?
How's it going?
All right, well, let's go ahead and break it down slowly. So I was up by 2 when the main event card started. First fight was Bobby Green and Thiago Moises. You had Moises, I had Green, and that fight went your way in a 3-round decision fight. Don, go ahead and give us your breakdown on that fight real quick.
Great fight. Absolutely great fight. Could have went to Green. Actually, I think Bobby Green won that fight. Thiago really showed an improved stand-up game. He showed really fast, sharp kicks. He was throwing a lot of heavy kicks. And Bobby Green looked a little slow round 1. So Thiago got the best of him round 1. But then interesting, Thiago couldn't get his jiu-jitsu going with Bobby Green. Bobby Green had the better wrestling. So then Thiago was forced to stand up with him and through the fight. And it looked as if Bobby Green outpointed him on the feet. But Thiago Moises may have landed the heavier blows in the fight. So, hey, I'll take a win any way I can get it. But fun fight, man. Really fun fight.
Well, I'm glad we agree. That makes this conversation a little bit easier. It was a great fight, first and foremost. Fought on both sides. Thiago was always dangerous in his grappling. He was always something for Bobby to worry about, and Bobby did a great job using his grappling evasively. He didn't really stay in any initiated grapples for too long. There was that clinch takedown he got against the cage that he held for a little bit, but I also think that he might have regretted that a little bit because that also, I believe, is what led to the first submission attempt that might have really scored high on the judges' cards. Now, speaking of high scoring, I'm guessing the judges were, because that fight was, I feel like, pretty clearly leaning towards Bobby Green. But, you know, that's what happens when you leave it in the hands of the judges. Bobby was cool about it. You know, he's a great guy, soft spoken, but sometimes he can have a bit of a temper and a bit of bitterness. But he was actually really cool about it, and I think he knows that Dana White saw the same fight that everybody else did. So that's what really matters in the end. I mean, sure, your record is a big issue, but if you've already got a couple of L's on it, you're not really holding on to an undefeated record or anything like that. I don't really. One of those moments could be really a big motivator for your next fight. And I know that Bobby Green's been on a tear, so maybe it's the best thing for him. Who knows?
Absolute tear, and you know, hopefully he stays active, keeps fighting. Maybe he has another fight in 2020. He might even beat Cerrone's record, man. I mean, Bobby Green's fought like what 3 or 4 times in 2020 already. But you brought up the sequence submission defense, the submission attempt with Thiago. Man, he had a really good bite on the heel hook. He went for the straight ankle. I think going for the straight ankle lock was possibly a mistake. I think he should have went right for the heel and started twisting Bobby Green's ankle and going for the the inside heel hook, which he eventually went for. But by then, Bobby Green already escaped the knee line. Once you escape the knee line, there's no real threat with a leg attack and then or even an entanglement. And then actually when they escape the knee line, you as the leg locker are a lot of times under fire. But they ended up scrambling out. But Thiago didn't try it. You know, I was hoping Thiago would try it again because his best submission has been his heel hooks in the UFC.
But the reason I think he was having such a hard time with Bobby Green is that Bobby Green's got some incredibly long legs for a fighter. And, you know, you know, as far as foot submissions go, especially with the heel hook or the straight ankle lock, all you got to do is push your foot through and get some extension through there. If you already got a long leg, long shin, that already makes it hard to get that kind of leverage in the first place. Yeah, I agree. It wasn't the best idea to go for a straight ankle lock. I think he might have just been grabbing what he felt was there. Had that ankle been across the body and on the other side, he definitely could have got more torque to it. But, you know, ultimately it ended up playing to his favor. He really sold the work he was doing and was enough to get the judges swayed in that area. So, but it was a great fight. It was fun to watch. Kept me on the edge of my seat. I thought I got my first W of the night, and I was turned away. So what a great way to start the event with a nice little tease there. The next fight was Kevin Holland versus substitute opponent Charlie Ontiveros. We both got Kevin Holland on that one. We both got it correct. It happened quickly. We expected it to be quick. We did not expect it to happen the way that it happened. Unfortunately, there was a pretty violent takedown, which I think was the effect of Charlie Ontiveros having to come up a weight class. You could see he was much smaller, not as fit. He came in with some really cool off-angle strikes, really tried to throw some impressive techniques, but ultimately Kevin Holland literally just grabbed him, pulled him off balance, and threw him on his neck, and that's the way the fight ended. What were your thoughts on it, Don?
It was a really weird slam that Kevin Holland got on Charlie Ontiveros. You know, he kind of had a head and arm. First, he took the back, and then he did a really, really cool technique where he kicked that leg out, almost like a round kick to the back of the calf. Mm-hmm. You don't normally see that with judo players. You know, judo players, they try to trip the foot, but Kevin Holland actually kicked that leg out, broke down Charlie Ontiveros, and then just took him by the head and arm and slammed him backwards in a nasty head and arm throw. I mean, that's like a Big Brother street fight type of technique that he did. And apparently he hurt something in Charlie Ontiveros' neck, but he recovered. There wasn't any neck damage, at least that I know about.
It looked like a Dutch kickboxing clinch hip toss, but with very bad intentions on it. And he sold his first trip, so it threw Ontiveros off position. So he was already off position with his hips and knees, because you want to keep your knees and hips in alignment if you want to stay upright when it's talking about clinch battles. And once he was off center line, Kevin Holland felt it, and he just chucked him. that was nasty.
He just chucked him straight back. And
It's
Kevin Holland, yeah, it was crazy, man. I haven't seen something like that in the UFC in a while, since like UFC 2 or something. But man, Holland trains with Travis Lutter, Carlos Machado, black belt. People, if you remember, Travis Lutter was the guy who had won the Ultimate Fighter series years ago, got a shot against Anderson, did pretty good against Anderson, and then I think he either got submitted or KO'd in Anderson's prime. But Travis Lutter was that guy that everybody thought he was going to beat Anderson Silva. And he trains Kevin Holland. So Kevin Holland has a great ground game. Kevin Holland, after the fight, got up, started talking smack to Izzy Adesanya, who was there, and he's not ready for that fight. And Travis Lutter even said, like, look, fight a couple more times, get a couple more wins. That's great advice for Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's good, really good. He's active. He beat the guy, Joaquin Buckley, who had that amazing sidekick to the face, won the crazy technique.
Yeah.
So he has some big wins, great grappler, but it's not ready for Izzy.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. He needs to stay in his lane a little bit there. Does he have a number next to his name?
I don't believe he does.
So I'm pretty sure if you don't have a check mark on your Instagram, you're not allowed to holla at the Instagram models. Isn't that the rule? If you don't have a certain status, you're not even supposed to be shouting at people. Keep your eyes straight.
I guess I never follow that rule.
Yeah, if you don't have at least a 15 next to your name, don't bother. That's embarrassing. That's a who the fuck is this guy moment, That's a who are you to talk to the king? Peasant. At least become a duke. I'm not saying that he's a bad fighter. I'm saying that he's in over his head on the call-outs. He doesn't belong in the ring with Izzy yet. He's going to need a couple more fights before he can step in the ring with the king. I don't think Izzy's going to fight at that weight class for a little while, seeing as that he kind of starched the top 5 right now. I think they were trying to see if the top 5 is still the top 5 with fights like how am I spacing on this? It just happened. The Aussie, how am I forgetting this right now? Whitaker, thank you. Fights like Whitaker against Cannonier. They're trying to test the mettle of the top 5. And I think what they're going to find is the top 5 is very good, and they're not going anywhere. Izzy is just that much better. I think we're going to see a little bit of shifting between Whitaker, Romero, Costa, and maybe Cannonier belongs in the fold. We'll see in his next fight. But it looks like those people are going to be holding court for at least the next 6 to 8 months, which gives Israel a really good window to work at that light heavyweight frame, which he's going for, and fighting Jan Blachowicz, who said that he doesn't want to fight until March. So what a great time frame for Izzy. He's got a lot of time to build up that weight in a healthy way. Really do it the way that you're supposed to, because if you gain weight too quickly in the wrong way, your body's not ready to move at that weight. It's one thing to get up there and be healthy. It's another thing to feel natural in your movement. So, and Jan Blachowicz is a big light heavyweight. He's a big 205. He walks around somewhere 225. So he's a big dude. But Israel likes big dudes. He likes fighting the big ones. It's what he kind of trained for. I think Jan Blachowicz is a different beast than, say, Paulo Costa, but he still brings a lot to the table. I don't know, how do you see that fight going?
Well, Izzy, like you said, he needs to be very careful about the weight that he puts on. If he puts on anything more than, I think he walks around probably around 200. So he'll probably come in right at that 205 mark just naturally. And so that will be good for him. I don't want to see him put up on too much size, because that's not his keys to victory, right? It's an interesting fight, Jan. I would lean towards Jan on that one, based on kind of Jan's power. But I mean, when we're talking about striking, Israel Adesanya is the man in the striking game. So I can't wait for that. It's interesting. John Jones moves up to heavyweight. Izzy moves up to light heavyweight. And then, now you have Jan Blachowicz, who's kind of holding it there. I don't know, man. If I was Israel Adesanya's manager, I would tell him just keep eating up the middleweights. Keep building up that resume. If you have to beat Whitaker again, beat him. If you have to beat all these guys again, beat him.
Yeah.
But he just wants challenges, and that, hats off to him. He's a real warrior. He's always asked for the toughest dudes in the division.
He doesn't just want challenges. He wants the challenge. He wants Jones. And what better way to get him than to claim the light heavyweight championship while he's not there? All John Jones is saying, the only reason he's moving to heavyweight is because he's already starched the light heavyweight division. But if Israel Adesanya all of a sudden comes in and holds court, that argument's out the window. John Jones is no longer the only person in talk for the GOAT, because Israel Adesanya, as far as his MMA career goes, I believe only has one submission defeat, right, early on in his career. Mm-hmm. So I think that's
actually he might actually be undefeated.
I think that might have been in his amateur career. Yeah. So in his MMA career, he might even be, holding 2 belts is something that definitely makes you the category for that. I don't think John Jones has had the heavyweight belt yet, so he hasn't had a 2 belt class, correct?
Right.
So I mean, is that the best way to get John Jones to come down a weight class? I think so. I like Israel Adesanya. I like his style, although Jan Blachowicz is the bigger fighter, and if he traps him well, it would be a short night for him. But the way Israel Adesanya has evolved since, say, even just as soon as when he fought Kevin Gastelum, how many shots he took in that fight, and then watching him progress from there, and the number of strikes that land on him gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I think Jan Blachowicz is going to have his handful with a much faster and much more technique striker. Jan's talented, but I think it's easy to say that Israel's got more tools in the striking department at his disposal. Jan Blachowicz doesn't really have the grappling to really take the fight to a different level. So he's going to have to compete at Israel Adesanya's level with him. It's different weight classes, but it's his game. So it's going to be a good fight. I look forward to that. I can't wait till March. Unfortunately, we have to. Anyways, the fight after Kevin Holland and Charlie Ontiveros was Maurice Green and Greg Hardy. You picked Green. I picked Hardy. I got Hardy. I hate taking a victory on that one specifically. Not a fan of Greg Hardy. Still not. I saw his fight, and I'm still not convinced. I'm still not convinced that he belongs anywhere in the top 15 yet. But I think this fight will earn him a top 15 fight. What do you think?
It definitely should, man. I don't know what I was thinking by picking Maurice Green on that fight. I mean, Maurice had that first early scare with Greg Hardy. He was able to get out of that place. And then he looked like he was keeping good distance, landing some leg kicks, landing some body shots, but never really shook off the cobwebs. And then Greg Hardy, man, when he comes in, it's that high-level athlete. He just comes in hard, and he's everything that you want in a heavyweight, man. He's exciting. He's, he's a scary dude, and now he even has the Dracula mouthpiece. I mean, besides his, personal stuff, what can't you like about him in a heavyweight? He's just one of those dudes.
Yeah.
But no, that fight was a good fight. But Maurice Green, yeah, I mean, I don't know why they put Maurice Green in there, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it was an odd matchup. I think they were still looking just for more experience for Hardy at this point. But I think this was his fight, his way of saying to the promoters, like, hey, I'm ready for you to step up my competitive level a little bit now. He had alluded to it a little bit in the pre-fight interviews and stuff, like saying that he used to be like a D-class fighter, and now he feels like he's a B+. I still think he's overrating himself a little bit. He's calling out pillow fist Derek Lewis. Let's be 100% honest. If he steps in the ring right now with Derek Lewis, Derek Lewis ends his career. What do you think about that statement?
I agree with you, man. I totally agree with you because it's, when you start saying, when he's saying he's now a B minus fighter or whatever, look, A, B, C, whatever you want to call yourself, he's still at the level where he is completely, let's say, reactionary in there, where the dudes on that higher level are strategic. They're going to have a game plan. And Greg Hardy's camp also has a game plan for Greg Hardy. But Greg Hardy doesn't have enough tools, right? So, I mean, you put him against Wald Harris, he'll get demolished. Volkov will kill him. Dude, I mean, we can name any heavyweight. Marcin Tibera would annihilate him. He hasn't shown he can get past adversity, and that's really the problem. When he gets gassed, he doesn't have enough tools to get around that moment. So yeah, he should not be calling Derek Lewis a pillow fist is like, what are you doing, man?
The only reason you'd call Derek Lewis pillow fist is if you were getting ready to take a nap, because that dude will put you to sleep with his pillow fist. He's the Sandman, night. That's the only reason you can call him pillow fist. I'd love to see Greg Hardy tune-up fight against like a Ben Rothwell or Andrei Arlovsky, some of these fading superstars that are on their way out. I think he would do great against one of these, the giants that are still around. There's a couple that have said that they thought about fighting again, maybe like a Shogun Hua. I don't know. Something like that. I think get him in there with a seasoned veteran to not only test his mettle, but to give him some tricks, give him some ring savvy. You don't really get that ring savvy until one of these old vets hits you with one of those moves that, like, yeah, it may not still have the sting that it had to it anymore, but you see it and you go, oh, and even in the ring, you can see them look at each other and the guy go, yep, like I still got some of those stingers in me. That's one of the greatest things about traveling and training with people is you get to learn all these people's their sneak tricks or their lockdown communist jiu-jitsu moves, or that's the best part about training in different camps and fighting other fighters is you get to taste what their specialty is. And there's only one way to know it, and it's to ride the wave. It's either fight them or train with them. So I think Greg Hardy needs to step up in talent for his own talent's sake. It would be a waste of such potential if they don't start giving him some serious fights. He's ready for it. He's reached double digits in fights now. So I think a great old vet would be a great next fight for him. What do you think about that?
I'm with you on that, but any of those guys you named, like Rothwell, will destroy him.
Totally.
Maybe Arlovsky's the best.
I think Arlovsky.
Yeah.
That's the one I agree with most. Alistair Overeem would kill him.
He's demolition.
I'm just trying to think of where he fits in the top 15 right now, and I think it's at the very end of the line. But kudos to his win. I hope he continues to progress. I do like seeing his fights. They are very exciting. Seeing him on that size rush at people is always fun to see. So, I'm for that. The fight after that, we had Bryce Mitchell versus Andre Fili. You had Bryce Mitchell. I had Andre Fili. You made a good decision. That was a great fight. Fight of the night, in my opinion. Do you want to start the breakdown on this, or you want me to go with it?
You can go for it.
All right. So what I saw in there was Bryce Mitchell becoming quicksand. He is so good at getting his opponents in uncomfortable positions and just dragging them down slowly and tapering off their stamina. I mean, we saw it in his last decision victory that he had. He's really good at holding his opponents down on the mat and working them, even if they got great jiu-jitsu. Man, he's fantastic. Well, he's mixed some really effective stand-up work into his fight tools. Really convincing hand work, some good leg work too, but more so in the fist. Really good job of throwing punches at range, throwing combinations. Andre Fili did a great job defending in the second round. He tried to mount a comeback, but the quicksand just kept wearing on him, and by the third round, you could tell that he had kind of lost all stamina, and Bryce just kind of pinned him down and worked it. Just such a good tactician. Bryce Mitchell is so methodical in his work on the ground. It's so amazing to watch this kid work because, there's so many jiu-jitsu players out there right now who are really rushing the game, who want to make the transition that gets him from guard to side mount, without going to half guard, without, switching from wrestler's cross to judo cross to whatever you can figure out. Bryce really just covers all the bases and really feels your weight and has no problem going where the fight goes. Really impressive grappling. I was super. Don, I'm sure you will. Go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, no, Bryce Mitchell's a real deal, man. And for me, it was just so hilarious to watch the pre-fight in that, because he wasn't talking about anything in the fight. He was just talking about his camo shorts.
Yeah.
Dana White, give me my camo shorts. And he just goes on. I mean, he's the true Ricky Bobby of MMA right now. And you got to love that guy. And then in the post-fight, he's doing this big rant about COVID. And, obviously the guy's, come on. But he's the true Ricky Bobby of MMA right now. And he's, he's such a character. And the cool part is he's a simple dude from simple upbringings and lives a simple life, but he's the real deal, man. And, the fight looked to me like he took a lot of pages out of Khabib's book. When he took down Andre Fili, he was lacing the legs and he was doing that nice figure four on the legs, controlling Andre Fili when he had Andre Fili down. And then he pushed to mount. Every opportunity he got, he went to mount. He didn't want to go to side control. And Andre Fili, for his pre-fight preparation, was working with Gary Tonin, one of the best American grapplers in the world. And Andre Fili had defense. If Andre Fili wouldn't have brought in Gary Tonin, I think Bryce Mitchell probably would have subbed him out in the first round. Hats off to Andre Fili for stopping that onslaught. And, Andre Fili never stopped moving that whole fight, man. And he was so, he had great framing. He had great hip positioning, and he never let Bryce Mitchell get in for the sub. But Bryce Mitchell was just relentless on the takedowns, and again, throwing the Khabib type 1-2 punches right in the takedown like clockwork, controlling that fight. Bryce Mitchell's a real deal, man, and that's a huge win, because Andre Fili's almost like he's like a veteran at this point. Andre Fili's fought everybody in the featherweight division, and Bryce Mitchell just made him look like he wasn't even on his level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only reason this would be a candidate for fight of the night would be from Andre Fili's performance. He showed amazing fundamentals in all aspects of the game. Really fought hard out of every position and fought for every piece of leverage. In his swell in the second round, he did have a really convincing momentum change that could have mounted to a comeback. Of course, the end of the second round ended in Bryce Mitchell getting a takedown, which probably is what, of course, kind of dug at the gas tank of Fili. But yeah, Fili's fought everybody from Max Holloway to, just a who's who list of people. Granted, he didn't win against a lot of them. But just like I said earlier with the Greg Hardy comment, just being in the ring with professionals like that really teaches you just some amazing things. Fili looked great. I don't think he has anything to be ashamed of with his performance. But I'm totally on the Bryce Mitchell train now. Like I said before on the last podcast, I said if Bryce Mitchell beats Andre Fili convincingly, I'm on his team. And you got me on this one, Don. I'm buying into the Ricky Bobby freight train of hype. I love it. The Bryce Mitchell show is what's on my TV now.
Dana White, give me my camo shorts.
Give me my camo shorts. And the main event of that night, Uriah Hall and Anderson Silva, a real technical strikers match. Anderson Silva's fights lately have been pretty slow paced, and for the first 3 rounds, two and a half rounds, I would call this fight that. Second fight had a combined of 17 strikes thrown. That's a pretty low output in combination of 2 fighters. That was a pretty boring round. But when you fight somebody like Anderson Silva or Uriah Hall, you really do have to take your time in solving the puzzle. But Uriah Hall ultimately did a great job of trapping Anderson Silva, knowing his lateral movement, having so much tape to watch on him. I think is what really was the difference for Uriah Hall. Just having so much footage. Anderson Silva's fought in the ring over 25 times with the UFC. That's far beyond most fighters. That is a crazy amount of fights in the ring. So with that comes a crazy amount of footage with all that hype. You know, all his little tricks, all the things that he's learned over the years and utilized. So at this point, you know, you really don't get to fight a new Anderson Silva. I don't know if there is a revolution for him anymore. I think it's time. A lot of fighters are saying it. Some fighters are saying against it. A lot of the brass are saying it. Go ahead, Don. Give us your breakdown and thoughts on that.
So Dana White kind of said it best that Uriah Hall is one of the most gun-shy fighters in the UFC. And, you know, it's kind of sucks to say because Uriah Hall is very talented. But I think Dana White and the UFC has always been frustrated with Uriah Hall because he's a guy that, you know, could have been, you know, he was a rising star, and some of the knockouts that he did, you know, he would do these spectacular knockouts, and then he wouldn't throw any punches, and then he'd get wrestled by somebody. Then the next fight he'd knock a guy out, and his career's always been kind of like that. So this fight was not a fight that the UFC put together. This is a fight that Anderson Silva requested because he wanted his last fight to be against a top 10 contender, top 10 guy, and that was Uriah Hall had the number 10 spot. So Anderson Silva got his wish in this fight. But as far as the output goes, I felt like Anderson was really trying to throw more, and that's why Anderson Silva got caught. You know, Anderson Silva, I think, could have laid back a little more and maybe counter strike more. But Uriah Hall, being the type of guy who's also a counter striker, he wanted to make it exciting. You know, he wanted to open up. And, you know, Anderson Silva landed some great leg kicks. He landed, you know, blow for blow. I think round one could have possibly went to Anderson, you know. Round two, that was the one where Uriah Hall clipped him at the end of the round. Anderson Silva got away. Anderson Silva should have went for a heel hook when he got knocked down, obviously, but when you get knocked down, almost knocked out like that, you're not thinking anything except for survive. But he had a heel hook kind of position where he was in between Uriah Hall's leg. He could have shot his legs over, and Anderson's won some fights by leg locks in Japan in the past. But, you know, and then round three comes around, and Anderson opened up way too much. I feel like Anderson should not have opened up the way that he did with Uriah Hall. He came in guns a-blazing, and he still had wear from that first knockdown. And then Uriah Hall capitalized with a beautiful, I think it was a right hand over the top. Actually, I can't remember how he got knocked out, but landed flush on the chin. And, you know, yeah, I mean, who's not going to be chinny after 25 UFC fights? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, some guys, you know, most people don't even last nearly, you know, a quarter of how long Anderson's been in there. And, you know, it was hard to see, man, because we all love Anderson Silva. We all love, you know, what he's done for the sport, a legend in the game. And to see him go out like that really sucked, man, to tell you the truth. I mean, for me, I was like, I just, at least I wanted to see him lose a decision. But, you know, guys have, you know, they call out the wrong people. Andre Philly called out Bryce Mitchell because Bryce Mitchell was top 15.
Right.
That's a terrible matchup. He only called him because he wanted that number. Anderson Silva called out Uriah Hall because he had the top 10. You know, if Anderson would have called out like whoever else was stylistically a better matchup, he would have had a better fight. But they're only doing it on the number, and I think that was a terrible fight for Anderson to call out.
Well, I think he wanted to see if he was still relevant. You know, I think he's really truly measuring whether or not he should continue a career in MMA beyond the UFC afterwards. Because I'm sure one is knocking at his door. I'm sure Bellator would throw him a contract. It's not a matter of people not wanting to see him fight and not giving him money. It's more so a matter of, like, what does he do next? And, you know, Anderson Silva said it many times, fighting is breathing to him. And for him to leave the game, regardless of win or lose, just for him to leave the game is extremely hard for him. You know, he he changed his hometown because of fighting, because of the money that he was able to make. He was able to really help his own neighborhood. So, there's a lot more. Yeah, there's a lot tied in for what motivates him to fight. And I could see it being very hard, but he's also, in his 40s. He's also fought 25 times in the UFC octagon. At a certain point, maybe it's time to go into coaching. Maybe find a prospect that you can make the next Anderson Silva and continue that success. There's a lot of
his sons are really good too. His sons are one of his sons is a amateur kickboxer, and he's already had a couple knockouts in kickboxing. And I think his sons will probably be really, really good. But like you said, man, Anderson Silva was working at McDonald's in Brazil, and now he lives in a mansion in Palos Verdes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy's made millions. Even Dana White says that, you'd be surprised how much UFC actually pays Anderson, because whatever they report on MMA Manifesto is not even true.
Yeah, no, they kept his contract super high just to make sure they took care of him, because he's responsible for one of the initial launches of the UFC into stardom. He was one of the original, Conor McGregor's, before it was cool to shit talk your opponents, when it was more cool to be the humble fighter and just bring your talents to the ring. Anderson Silva was the total encapsulation of that. He was, I think, one of the last martial artists that brought that level of discipline to the game. Now we have these super talented people who train with multiple camps, but you also lack that discipline of having one solid camp, one solid teacher, one person to call your master, your sensei, your sifu, whatever you train. You lose that discipline in there. And now you have a lot of fighters like Sugar Sean O'Malley, who are talented, have tools, but no respect for what came before them, no respect for the development of the martial arts. And ultimately, I think in order to really make a well-rounded mixed martial artist, you really need to have appreciation for that discipline too. I think the MMA game would really benefit in having Anderson Silva as some type of coach down the line, opening his own school. He could really.
He'd be amazing. He'd be an amazing coach, But looking at that fight, as much as I want to say that looked like a Chuck Liddell at the end of his career, I almost think that Anderson could maybe make a run at Bellator. These last Bellator fights, nobody's as technical as Anderson on the feet, man.
He's definitely capable. He's definitely capable. I agree. He looked hot in that first round coming out. He looked real hot. But, that's at a certain point, the risks get really high. You look at people like, say, Muhammad Ali, who was still definitely capable of knocking a dude out and putting on a good fight later on in his career. But when he continued to try to stay relevant and fight some of this prospect young talent, that's unfortunately what ended up in him getting, early onset and things like that. Now, of course, boxing is a different sport where all you do is hit each other in the head, where in MMA, there's so many different places to take the fight. But, it is a legitimate fear of CTE and the residuals of head injuries. Maybe is this a sign of things to come, or is this, maybe a reawakening from a loss? Who knows? But is it really worth that risk? Because he's not fighting for money, and he's not fighting for pride. He's not fighting for legacy. He already has all these things. Right now, he's really just fighting because that's all he knows. And that in itself is got a little bit of sadness to it. And that doesn't make me happy to see Anderson Silva fighting just because he feels like that's all he can do. That kind of bothers me. There's so much more things for fighters to be able to do outside of the game if they want to. But I don't blame him for not wanting to leave, man. It's been so good to him. It's really made his life amazing. So I understand what he's going through, but it could be hard to watch is what I'm saying.
No, I'm with you, man. I'll be happy either way, now that you kind of broke it down, I would probably say, Anderson will probably be better off retired. When we're talking about Muhammad Ali and, things like that. Anderson's taken a lot of blows, man. He's given a lot of blows. He went, 9 years undefeated in the UFC as a middleweight champion. And yeah, he didn't take too much that time. He was just given. He was the hammer at that time.
Except for
But
Chael
if
Sonnen. Chael Sonnen jacked him up.
yeah,
Yeah.
Chael got him pretty good with the punches, but a true strikers, true fighters, like you said, fight because it's what they do. Like he said, it's his breath. And Anderson Silva, man, hats off to you. Love you, brother. Um, you know what? I'd like to see you retire.
Yeah. It would be hard to watch him fight, but I would watch it. And that makes me feel something of a certain way about myself as well. But, I did watch the Tito and Chuck rematch too, and I didn't feel very good about that one afterwards.
Yeah.
That one hurt my
I
heart.
love me some Tito Ortiz, man.
Yeah, speaking of which, just go ahead and talk about it right now. Tito Ortiz just won a council seat in Huntington Beach. So the Huntington Beach bad boy just literally became the bad boy of Huntington Beach. That's awesome. What do you think about that, Don? Does it make you worried to go back?
Well, first off, Tito was on The Apprentice with Trump, right? Yeah. And Trump loves Tito. And I forgot what Chael Sonnen just goes on and on about how stupid Tito, like he's the dumbest guy that you've ever seen. And you look at Tito and you listen to him and you just kind of agree with Chael. You're like, you're probably right. And but you know what, Tito, man, it's interesting because Tito is a legend in the sport. He has a lot of clout, especially in Huntington Beach. He used to be one of these guys. He was like one of the top wrestlers in Huntington Beach. He coached a lot of people in Huntington Beach. He rolled around with Tank Abbott in his come up in the UFC. And then he was virtually unbeatable in some of his fights in the UFC, on his come up, he lost to Frank Shamrock, but in the early days, Tito built the UFC in certain ways with Chuck Liddell in those times. And he's great for the sport. As far as politics go, I can't comment on that. His thing looks exactly like Trump. His sign looks exactly like Trump. Hey, all that aside, because we're in the heat in the moment, hats off to you, Tito. Like you said, the bad boy of Huntington Beach, the big head. Hey, you're doing well, sir.
Yeah, no, he's come a long way, man. He's come a really long way. I remember being in high school and him being at our wrestling meet, hawking his TitoOrtiz.com gear and just showing up like, hey guys, wear a Tito shirt, throwing Tito beanies out and just being happy to be a part of the local scene. And man,
the flame beanies.
Yeah, exactly. And to watch it go where it's gone now, from him showing up to like a random CIF wrestling tournament to him just being a total superstar to being a council member, like, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing to see. And you know what? If war generals can get into politics, why can't fighters? It all makes sense. So
I love it how he was dogging Joe Rogan for leaving California. He's like, Joe Rogan, you're a quitter. It's like, dude, it's not Joe Rogan. It's millions of people leaving California. It's not just Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan is not a Californian. He's from the East Coast. He only lived in California for the art. And if the art's dry, so is Joe Rogan. He's out of there. He's a Boston guy, I believe, originally. So, he's got his loyalties deep in his heart. We all know where he's from. All right. So getting to the next card, it's going to be another fight night in Vegas, the Apex Center, which means it's the smaller ring. We got some really good fights on the main card. I'm pretty impressed. Normally after a decent card, you're normally going to see, a little bit of slowness, but we got a good one here. Opening fight is Claudia Gadelha versus Xiaonan Yan, who's a Chinese fighter, obviously. Not a lot of intel on her, but from what we've seen from the fighters that do come out of China, man, are they impressive. We look at Claudia's record, and she's pretty heavy in the submission side. So we can pretty much know what to expect from her side of the fight. Although it looks like the Chinese fighter, who's 12-1, has a majority of knockout finishes with a couple of submissions, which shows to me that, no submission victory. Sorry about that. Just the decision or KO. So what we're going to see here is, I think, a classic fight of striker versus jiu-jitsu. just from the stats. What you got? Any predictions on this? You feel any type of way?
Well, Zhao, she has a win over Carolina Kalozis. Very good fighter. Then she has a win over Angela Hill too.
Really? I didn't.
But yeah, I just saw that. But they're both strikers, and Claudia, with the experience on the ground and being a jiu-jitsu fighter who can take the fight to the ground, I think favors Claudia just based on kind of, knowing what I know about Zhao in her last couple fights. She decisioned Angela Hill and she decisioned Carolina Kalozits. And Carolina had some good fights against Joanna.
Mhm.
So, yeah, man, I'll go with Claudia on this one based on its jiu-jitsu, grappling.
Gotcha. I'll go with Xiao Nan just based off of what I've seen from the fighters out of China lately. I like what they got in the water. Her record's impressive. It looks like a good matchup, though. Normally, when we're going striker versus jiu-jitsu, I'd go jiu-jitsu just because, that really dictates the pace of the fight. And no matter what style you fight, 80% of the fights end up on the ground at some point anyway. So statistically, it would favor Claudia. But call it a hunch. Call it a hunch. Next fight, we have Brendan Allen versus Ian Heinch. Heinch. I always say that name funny. I'm going with Ian Heinch in this one, just because his last performance, his last couple performances have been pretty impressive. Even though he had a loss 2 fights ago, I think he still looked good out there. So I like Ian in this one. What do you think, Don?
Don't know too much about Allen. I like Ian actually. I like Ian a lot in MMA in general.
Mm-hmm.
I picked him to win some other fights, and he's done really good. I think his last fight he lost to, I want to say, God, who is that guy? Really, Derek Brunson. Yeah, he lost to Derek Brunson, but he beat Antonio Carlos Jr., who's world champion jiu-jitsu, one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the UFC and kind of underrated in the UFC. So I'm going to go with Ian again based on that. Ian also beat Omari Akhmadeyov, who's also really good.
Mm-hmm.
Ian beat Gerald Mearshart, who's a really good guy. So, yeah, man, I'll go with Ian on this.
Yeah, we agree on that one. Ian he's been looking really good in his past few outings. So I really, really look forward to seeing more of him. Fight for that, we have Haoni Borales versus Khalid Taha, a German fighter. I don't know much about Taha. Do you?
I don't know either of these guys.
Yeah, I don't either. I think this would be a coin flip fight, so we don't even have to pick if you don't want to. I don't know anything about either one of them. You don't. Do you like either one of them's name? So that'll be a fun one to watch. That'll be a good bar setter as far as some of the new talent coming in. I think they're probably a part of the new pool of American talent that they're coming in, because I know that the fighters from Brazil and Germany, but I know that they have camps in the United States. So I think what they're doing is they're continuing that pooling of the new talent from the international on the hemispheres of, what they can bring out to America and what they do in Dubai. So I think this is just a continuation of that to add to the roster. I hope we have some great fighters coming our way. After that, we have Andrei Arlovsky, speaking of the devil, versus a fighter named Tanner Boozer. Don't know much about him. Do you know anything about Boozer?
Tanner Boozer's been, I want to say, on a tear in the UFC. And to get this fight against Andrei Arlovsky, it makes sense. I need to see Tanner's MMA record, because I know that he just had a couple wins. Okay, yeah, so he beat Rafael Posel, and he also beat Philip Lins.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, now I know who we're talking about. And Philippe Lins was a guy who was a World Series of a PFL champion who won the $1 million tournament and took out a lot of heavyweights. And I was actually I picked Philippe on that, and I lost, and Tanner got it. So I hate picking against Andrei Arlovsky, but I'm going to go with Tanner on this one based on kind of his rise. It looks like he's more of an up-and-comer in this fight. So I'm going to go with Big Tanner.
I don't feel bad picking against Andre Arlovski at all. His cardio has looked kind of unimpressive in his last fight. He's a little bit slower. I mean, he's old. He's getting older. That's what happens. I think he's another one on the boat that might be retiring soon. I'm also going Boozer on this one, surprisingly so. Just because, like you said, up-and-comer. And Andre Arlovski's definitely lost a step. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not a competitive fighter anymore, but I am going to say that he's not the Andre Arlovski that fought, Tim Sylvia back in the day, of course. So he's definitely lost a little twist on the end of that punch there. So I think Boozer is going to use him as a stepping stool to launch his career into the top 15. Who knows? Maybe Boozer might be Greg Hardy's next opponent. Huh?
There you go.
If Boozer wins against Andre Arlovski, that wouldn't be a bad fight to make at all. I like that a lot. Maybe I'll at Sean Shelby that or something.
There you go.
All right, after that fight, the main event, we have Thiago Santos coming back after his dual knee surgeries against Glover Teixeira in what I can only assume is going to be just a slugfest. What do you think this fight's going to look like, Don?
Who do you have in this one?
Ooh, I don't know. I think we're both winners either way. Man, Glover looked so good in his last outing, but Thiago really mixed it up against John. Man, what a tough call. This is really a tough split. Man, Glover, when he fought Anthony Smith, just when you thought that Glover might be losing it a little bit, he might be getting a little old, he just puts it on the younger fighter and literally breaks his face, man. And then you got Thiago Santos, who, I think I would take Glover in this just because this is Thiago's first fight after having some pretty big surgeries. I'm sure he's been training properly. I'm sure he's been preparing. But there's something about when you redline your body like you do in a fight. It's one thing to prepare for it. It's another thing to actually go past that threshold. And I think Glover will probably have a great strategy for that. So I'm going to go with Glover on this. What do you think?
I'll go with Thiago.
Because
I wanted to hear your pick because I could go either way.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree with you. Glover, the way he looked against Anthony Smith, the way he's looked in his last couple fights, I mean, he just looked awesome, man. But you know what? I'll pick Thiago mostly on the John Jones fight. But styles make fights, man. But when you have Thiago Santos, younger, hungrier, less chinny, man, I'm gonna go with Santos on this, and it's gonna have to be a knockout if Thiago wins because Glover's not gonna let up at all, and Glover has better takedowns. Glover has better ground as far as grappling goes. But I think Thiago can keep it on the feet.
Right.
Thiago can really wear him out with some of these big shots and probably knock him out.
Well, the point to make is that Glover hasn't really had a 5-round fight in a long time. Meanwhile, we had Thiago Santos, who just had a blowout fight with John. Just a great fight where he almost could have swayed the judges in some arguments. But he is also coming off of dual knee surgeries, which means a lot of his physique was lost, a lot of his cardio was lost, and he did work a long time to get it back, but wasn't long enough. And Glover, man, you got to be 100% ready for that dude because he is a bad dude, and he swings with bad intentions in every fight. His angling is sick. The way he corners a fighter is just amazing. He really put it on display against Smith. Just the way he's able to trap a younger, possibly more modernly trained fighter, the way he's able to still corner and just make the ring seem so much smaller is such a great tactic to have against a fighter like Thiago. And then when you bring into effect that we're fighting in the smaller cage, I think it really benefits Glover in that one because, like you said, he's got the better clinch fighting, the better takedowns. But yeah, this is a 50-50 pick 'em. If you're betting on this Vegas odds, flip a coin and see which one it lands on because it could go either way.
It's tough to say on this one, right? But it's always interesting too because when you look at a fight and you pick it based on how somebody does with John Jones, you never really know, right? Because Alexander Gustafsson, everybody thought, oh, Alex won that fight. And then he put together maybe a few good fights, and then he kind of fell off, right? And then Dominic Reyes, you thought, man, Dominic Reyes almost beat John Jones. Then Dominic gets knocked out by Jan Blachowicz. That's why I say styles make fights, is you can't really say, how they fared with John Jones is how they're going to, it means anything on their next opponent. Maybe
Right.
John Jones was coasting and just saw something to get that easy victory.
Because
right?
you never know what John Jones is going to show up fight night.
Well, there you go. Right. There you go. But I think as far as, as far as, the younger, hungrier fighter, obviously he's going to go to Thiago Santos. Knockout power, that could go either way, man. On those two guys, they both have knockout power. I mean, they both have knockout power. So that's going to be a great fight, though, man. I'm really excited for that fight.
Yeah, I think the brass at UFC were sliding some names around. Like, what do you think of this fight? This fight? Oh, that looks good. We think of this fight. And then they brought these two names together, and they went, don't touch it. It's perfect. This fight is such a great fight night main event. It's got fight of the night written all over it. It's exactly what you want on your main event card as your main event. I love it. I can't wait for this fight. This fight's got me excited. And it's very rare that I get excited for the UFC fight nights. I'm not going to lie. Some of them are kind of like fights that you got to convince me they're going to be good. This one, man, if this one turns into a flop, I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I believe. I might as well pack it up and become a Scientologist or something, because I'm wrong on all levels. But no offense to Scientologists, of course. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the events that we got coming up as well this week. Tomorrow, Bellator 251 happens. We have Corey Anderson's debut happening finally. We've been looking forward to this one for a while. Or sorry, Derek Anderson. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was right. Corey Anderson is fighting Melvin Manoff in the main event. We got a couple of other interesting fights. Not really ones worth mentioning, but how do you think Corey's going to fare in his main event appearance?
I think this is a no-brainer. Corey Anderson's going to take this fight. I mean, Melvin Manhoff, is one of the best strikers. If you look at striking and what he's done, the guys he's fought, in Glory Kickboxing, in all of his kickboxing matches, and what he's done in Bellator, he has some great fights. But Corey Anderson left in a weird time in the UFC, because he was already at the top and he was beating all these guys, and we were looking at Corey Anderson possibly getting a title shot, and then he leaves the UFC. So Corey Anderson's going to take this fight. Also on that card's Austin Vanderford,
the undefeated
man's husband. But Austin Vanderford, man, I want to see him win this fight. The first opponent that he had was a really good guy, Chris Curtis, that got canceled. Now he's going to fight Vinicius de Jesus, who's also a really, really good Brazilian fighter who's won the LFA title and had a lot of good UFC Bellator fights. So I'm going to be watching that card, and I hope, I'm going for Austin Vanderford because, truth be told, man, he's probably one of the best guys in Bellator right now. I mean,
oh yeah,
so freaking good, man. I mean,
yeah.
He beat a Dagestani. He beat the bricks off this Dagestani he fought last, and nobody thought he was going to beat him.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the call up pretty soon. He's undefeated in Bellator. He's been holding court there for a while. Yeah, he's a great fighter. And Paige Van Zandt also signed her first fight with bare knuckle finally, coming Super Bowl weekend in February. We're looking at that Saturday or Friday night. So that's on the map too. Looking forward to that one. Man, great fights on the horizon. Also, not to forget, Mike Tyson, Jones Jr. happening at the end of the month. They just had their press conference. It's still golden. So
I feel like we've been talking about this all year.
It's been pushed. It's been pushed a couple times. It was supposed to be August, September, November. So, maybe this fight will happen in 2021. But man, I don't care how long they keep me on a string. I will hand them my money happily to see this fight. It'll be one of the ones that I don't pirate. I really want to add. I want to be one of the numbers, but that they say we had sold a record number 250 million pay-per-view buys. I'll be like, I was one of them. What an amazing time to be alive. I can't wait for that fight. If it ever happens, of course. We also have ONE FC happening on November 6th. So tomorrow the 5th we have Bellator. Friday the 6th we have ONE Championship, and Saturday the 7th we have the UFC Fight Night happening. Man, what a weekend! If this has been a tough week for you, what a great way to end it. That's the best way to say it without saying it. No matter what side you feel like you might be on, we're all fight fans. If you're listening to this podcast, you're a fan of fighting. So this is a good weekend for us, you guys. Regardless of how you feel about anything else, what a great weekend we got in front of us. I don't know any of the fighters on the ONE card. Do you?
I don't know if Gary Tonon's going to be fighting on this card, but if he's not fighting on this one, he's going to fight on the next one. You know, I'm going with Gary Tonon. He's fighting a guy who's 12-0. Gary Tonon's one of the best American Jiu-Jitsu martial artists in the world. You know, Abu Dhabi champ. You know, if you look at guys like Ryan Hall and things like that, Gary Tonon's like the top. So super excited for that. ONE FC. Every time I look at the last like 4 or 5 ONE FC cards, I don't know any of the guys. They're all guys from like Thailand, Korea, which is great. You know, Asia's, you know, the Asian market, they're building these guys up, which is great. But I don't really know a lot of them, you know, like they have Eddie Alvarez, they have Demetrius Johnson. I don't think they're fighting on this card. But hey, there's another fight to watch, so I'll be watching it.
Yeah, it's fights. Also, I tuned into something about 3 weeks ago on Cam Soda. There was Lithway fights happening over in Singapore, I believe. I don't know if you follow Lithway, but it's Muay Thai and steroids. And they were having 2-on-1 fights and all types of sideshow stuff. So be on the lookout. I'll post the link next time if I see it happening again. But there's some wacky events happening in 2020 over in that Asian market. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for any Lithway events coming up, especially on Cam Soda of all things. That's normally
if it's the small people fighting, I will watch that because I love me some small people fighting.
It did have little people fights on there, and
awesome.
Yeah, they had 2 little persons versus a full size person, which I thought was. Like, what do you can't just go Scooby-Doo bad guy on him and stack on shoulders. That's just not right. So, but I'll still
like
watch
if you go to Phuket, you know, you go to Thailand, like I've been there and there's the craziest stuff going on there. Don't jump in the ring if you had a few drinks, guys. Just don't do it. You're gonna get slept by 2 little people.
Or a lady boy who's got a mean right cross, man. You never know. Also, what's going on in MMA right now? Nevada Commission dropped the hammer on a few fighters for pissing hot. We got Kevin Kroom, standout star of his debut, I believe it was, when he came in on short notice. Of course, he came in with less than a week's notice. He pissed hot for pot. Also, Nico Price is facing sanctioning for
really Nico.
Well. Yeah, after his fight with Cowboy, he tested positive for weed. Jose Flores and Jordan Levitt from the Contender Series also pissed off for weed earlier in the year. And then just recently, Chad Johnson was on Contender Series, lost his spot due to pissing hot for amphetamines. So that is a little bit different. But, you know, to be honest, that could be for anything. That could be for a nasal spray. That can be for Benadryl. You know, so it's hard to say what made him piss hot on that. That's a pretty hard accusation. That comes with a full year suspension. What do you think about the suspensions being handed out for pot smoking?
I mean, it's no surprise that should not. That's not a performance enhancer,
right?
You know, athletes, man. I mean, if you train at the highest level and and your body's beat down every single day. Your body's aching every single day. Who knows what therapeutics you need, and to say that, cannabinoids or whatever, CBD, that's just the stupidest thing, if you're talking about other stuff, yeah, that makes sense. Something that can help you hurt another man, because yeah, they're fighting. It's a real blood sport, obviously, but that's ridiculous. That's so stupid. And I thought we were past this. I thought we were past this moment in MMA already. Like, now that I hear it, it's not even something that I feel like people should get suspended for.
It's because the Nevada State Commission is still involved, in my personal opinion. The Nevada State Commission, the remnants of what's left of the boxing commission, because, they lost all credibility in boxing. The ones that tried to reclaim their careers moved over to the UFC. And, I think it's kind of like just a stranglehold. It's something that they can do to leverage power at any time. Kind of like the NCAA holds over, their athletes. The Nevada State Commission likes to hold some ranking authority over the fighters and over the league, because there's a lot of money flowing through the UFC. There's a lot of fights happening in Nevada, and there's a lot of people that want to get paid too. So that money's got to come from somewhere, and unfortunately, it's going to come from some fines as well. Yeah, I don't agree with it. Obviously, I'm a stoner. I'm a stoner. I'm of course for it, but Nevada's a recreational legal state. So what's going on? What's the problem?
Well, look what they did with Nick Diaz, man. They put Nick Diaz through this giant legal battle.
They ended his career.
Yeah.
They sunk the man. Because he was, before his weed suspension, who was he fighting? Conor McGregor? Yeah, that's right. Or not Nick, I'm sorry, but Nick had just such a great career going for him before he was suspended. And then Nate even got popped for weed too. And it's like, dude, at a certain point, it's like, yeah, these fighters smoke weed. You're picking low-hanging fruit. Like, just give him the fine and move on. Don't even make him pee in a cup. He's smoking. I'm pretty sure Nate Diaz was smoking weed from a weed pen in his post-fight interview after fighting Conor McGregor. So yeah. It's like, there's no consistency. And if there's no consistency, there's no way to prepare for it. So I think they need to figure out one way or another what the deal is and have a universal agreement on it, because it's not there yet. We're almost there, but we're not there yet. All right. So to wrap up the show, I would like to do something where we share a clip of the week. Don, you interested in seeing this week's clip of the week?
I have not seen this before, man. I'm excited to see it.
All right. This comes to us by way of the Contender Series. This happened earlier in the week. Ignacio Bahamondes with a very impressive knockout. I feel like it's a great homage to Anderson Silva. Here we go. It may look familiar. Let's go and watch it.
Whoa.
Now let's watch a slowed down version right here.
Bank.
Here's what I like about it. All right. He reads his lateral side to side movement. You can see that his opponent has dipped his head and is moving left, right. You'll see this coming up pretty soon right here. Left, right. He's keeping his head down. That kick was barely even a front kick. I would consider it more of a high teep. It looked like a chest teep kick, but because his opponent's posture was so low and he kept swaying off that center line, he was just kind of playing whack-a-mole, He was just waiting for it to hit center and then line it up to meet.
No doubt. That's a tough stance to have in MMA. His opponent who had that stance, man, you're open for round kicks, front kicks, uppercuts. That's a tough stance that he had. But yeah, knockout of the year, no. Negative, not even close.
Nope.
Amazing knockout, yes. That was pretty awesome.
It was a cool knockout, especially for a fighter in the Contender Series. I hope he got that contract from that, which I'm pretty sure he did. So kudos. We'll be seeing you more soon. Hopefully you can continue the impressive knockouts coming. That's all I've got. Don, you got anything you want to bring to the table? Anything else we want to talk about?
Man, as far as Stoner versus Stoner, we got you on a game show coming up. What's going on?
That's right. I'm not allowed to advertise too much about it, but I'm filming for Let's Make a Deal tomorrow. So who knows? I might win something. Probably not. I mean, if you watch the show, you know that a lot of people walk away with silly parting gifts as opposed to actual payout prizes. But I'm into it. It'll be a good time. Let's do it. Let's go.
You see us with new microphones and gold necklaces, ladies and gentlemen. You know what happened.
Yeah, with
Man
a
wants some
gold
money.
tooth right out front, right out here, and act like I don't know nobody. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. Don, where can our listeners find you?
Find me at dstoner_LWJJJ, LWJJ, on Instagram, and Don Stoner on Facebook. And yeah, guys, keep commenting. Love to see you guys, comment on our live streams. Likes, everything means a lot to us. And interacting with the fans and the people that watch the show. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. We really do appreciate it. Make sure you follow up on our previous episodes by checking out our YouTube channel. You can find the link on our Facebook page. I feel like I'm just sending you one place to go to another. Check out my social media at Chino Bra, ChinoBrah. That's everything from Facebook, Instagram, all those good stuff, as well as on Oculus. If you are a VR user, add me on Oculus at Chino Bra. And you can come see one of my virtual reality comedy shows that I'm doing in Altspace. It's free. It's a good time. Come check it out. I think it's a good time. I don't know. None of it's real. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We hope you had a good time. Enjoy the fights coming up, as always, and aloha.